Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon. How are you doing today? I am pleased and excited to open today's conversation and introduce our featured participants. My name is Deborah Amalola, and I'm a part of the Pre-Law Institute and the Macaulay Honors College. Assuming his role in 2023, Judge Joseph Zayas is the first Latino Chief Administrative Law Judge in New York State. Justice Zayas holds the highest ranking administrative position and second highest judicial position in the New York State judiciary. He is responsible for overseeing the day to day operations of the state court system, the system's $3.7 million budget, and the over 300 state and local judges, and 15,000 non judicial employees that work in the system. As a West Harlem native, Judge Zayas attended New York City public schools, received his bachelor's degree from Fordham University, and his Juris Doctor from Columbia Law School. Among his priorities, Judge Zayas is focused on increasing diversity on the bench and in the judicial system. As a pre law student myself, I am so excited to hear about his story and his work. And I know the audience will have a few questions later on, so keep that ready. Today's conversation will be facilitated by our college president, Carol V. Mason. Before joining John Jay, President Mason served as a United States Assistant Attorney General and head of the Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs. She oversaw an array of criminal justice initiatives, advancing community and police trust and reentry. She also served as a Deputy Associate Attorney General at the Department of Justice from 2009 to 2012. President Mason received her law degree from the University of Michigan Law School and her bachelor's from the University of North Carolina. I thank the Office of External Affairs for arranging today's program and presenting me with the opportunity. Please join me in welcoming the Chief Administrative Law Judge, Joseph Zayas. Thank you.
And let's give a round of applause for Deborah as well. You did a fabulous job. Thank you. We've had two law-related things in 2 weeks in a row. We had our law day last Friday, the 20th year of our pre-law institute. Now I'm looking for Gotham, Elizaveta, and Isaac. I know you're here. Can you raise your hands? Because unfortunately with this low chair, I really can't see you. So why don't you move up a little front? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna announce to you that I'm gonna come to you for your question after I ask one, to give you some advance notice, to give you time for Ryan to get the mic to you, okay? But I can't see you guys. They gave me this low chair. Thank God, because we discussed what high chairs would be like. So Judge Zayas, we are so happy to have you. And for those of you who don't know, he's been to John Jay a lot. He was just here last week too. He is a good friend of this institution, has invited us to bring a group of students to see the court in action. So a lot of these folks don't understand what the New York Court of Appeals is and what your job is. How about explaining the importance of the New York Court of Appeals and why your job is so important in this state?
Oh, great. So,
And you could just take that mic.
So I think you folks may have heard from Chief Judge Rowan Wilson. So Chief Judge Rowan Wilson is the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals in Albany. And so all of the cases that go to the Court of Appeals are cases that first have to be decided by the intermediate appellate courts. I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but the Court of Appeals in Albany decides, they're the ultimate arbiter of what the law in New York State is. So it could, and it ranges from anything from criminal cases to surrogates matters to the dispute between the branches of government, the legislative and executive branch, in terms of who has the power to do what. And their word is essentially final. If they decide a federal question, then even their opinion can be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court of the United States. So Judge Rowan Wilson runs the Court of Appeals, so he's the chief judge of the Court of Appeals, but he also has a responsibility for appointing the person that's going to run the operations of the whole state. And so my role as the chief administrative judge is to do that latter function. So in 2023, in April 2023, actually May 23, he appointed me to oversee the courts in New York State. At the time, I was an appellate division judge, an intermediate appellate division judge in Brooklyn. So there's four intermediate appellate court division judges, and had been appointed to that court doing appeals directly from the trial courts, and then an appeal from my court would go to the Court of Appeals. And he asked me to leave that wonderful job where it was intellectually challenging and exciting and everything that I had always wanted. It was sort of my end game, and the chief judge asked me to take on this responsibility. And I, because of who he was and the great instincts he had about changing the court system, I agreed to do that. So my job now is.
And I just want to say one thing. He is the first Latino Hispanic person to hold this job in the history of New York State.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's really a historic moment because there has never been an African American chief judge, and Rowan Wilson was appointed by the Governor Hochul in April of 2023, and then he immediately appointed me as the first Latino chief administrative judge. So it's real historic time in our court system, and so that's basically my role now is to oversee everything related to every courthouse. We have 300 courthouses. We have a budget of almost 3.7 million, but
billion.
Billion, billion is what I always say. I've just made a presentation to the Senate and the Assembly to increase my budget by 10% so we could deal with some of the entrenched problems in our courts. And that's what I do. And it's building the morale of the judiciary. It's building relationships with the legislators because we're constantly asking them for things. So we're building our friendships, and we're trying to place particular emphasis on family court and criminal court and the backlogs in those courts, as well as a myriad of so many other things.
So one of the things, and I'm glad you mentioned the family court. So one of the things that you've talked about is the importance of being out in the community. And I will tell you that he's been out and about in the community. Everywhere I go, I see you. I've seen you in Albany. I've seen you here. I've seen you at Sing Sing. He's out there really understanding what's happening across the state. So you all have made the family court a priority. Help them understand why that's so important to the operation of our whole judicial system, why the focus on the family court is so important.
Sure. So let me first clarify. She said she saw me at Sing Sing, but I was not an inmate. It was an interesting, wonderful thing that we did where we met. The chief judge and I and so many other people met with current prisoners in Sing Sing to talk to them about their experiences. That was
really powerful,
pretty incredible. So with family court, there are, number one, after COVID, there was such a lack of resources, and there was this. You guys heard of the Great Resignation? Great Resignation. Some of you might be part of the Great Resignation, but basically during COVID, people stopped wanting to come to court, and so we would post jobs in the court system, and we would get very few applicants. Where in previous years we would get tons of applicants to take these, but because we weren't offering a remote work option. People weren't applying, and I guess people moved away from New York City to more remote areas, et cetera. So when we started, family court was a major concern for us. It has some sort of natural logistical problems because there's so many lawyers on a single case. So just think about it, like the father has a lawyer, the mother has a lawyer. The if the parents are arguing over custody and visitation, each of the 3, 2, 1, 6 children might have a lawyer. So now every time a judge wants to adjourn a case, he or she has to navigate the schedules of 7 busy lawyers, and those lawyers have other judges who are requiring them to appear in other courts. So there was a resource problem. There was a lack of focus on providing those resources, and there were just some entrenched problems in the courthouses. So we immediately requested, I think it was 27 judges in our first new family court judges in our first budget. We demanded, court attorneys are the law clerks to the judges, and as well as to, do court attorney referees so that they can settle cases. And then we increased the number of support magistrates who could decide all of these support magistrates themselves. There's a few things going on now where we're meeting with the governor's office, sort of our partnerships in government, where we are trying to get the courts, trying to get some recommendations to make family court more accessible to the public, more effective in reducing backlogs and things of that nature.
Great. So Isaac, I see you. Where's Ryan? Can we get a mic to Isaac? And let's ask his question. And Elizabeth, you're going to be after Isaac.
Hello there. My name is Isaac Zuniga. I'm part of the Urban Male Initiative.
Can you just keep your voice up?
I'm part of the Urban Male Initiative My Brother's Keeper program. Isaac Zuniga, by the way, just in case. And my question was, as Chief Administrative Judge, you stated that your goal was to diversify the bench. What strategies are you looking to employ to diversify the bench and the Office of Court Administration as a whole?
Sure. I mean, we are always interested in diversifying the bench, but we are at a point now where, and I've said this publicly, we want the best people for the job as well. And so my view is we interview, we recruit. This is just for judges, judicial diversity, right? So let me address that first, and then I'll talk about non-judicial. And judicial diversity, most of the judges elected in New York City are actually throughout the state are elected judges, right? So there's some limits as to what a court system can do to have an effect on that, because it's the people of the counties that elect these judges or the judicial districts. So we've been certainly discussing it a lot. We've been providing some advice to and so now, the courts are separate from the political partners in government. So we've been making every effort, but the elections in New York City, which is where the Latinos and Asians and African Americans, are in terms of the electorate and the number of people who want to become judges, has been increasing really dramatically. I mean, when I became a judge in 2003, there were only a few judges in the courthouse I was in, and now there's probably 13 or 14. The appellate division, the intermediate appellate court, in my day when I was a lawyer practicing in those courts, there was only one Latino judge in the first department, which covers Brooklyn, which covers Bronx and Manhattan, and only one African American judge in Brooklyn, the second department, which covers Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, Long Island, Westchester, etc. And now in each of those courts, there are 5 or 6 Latinos and another 5 or 6 African Americans. So I think that in those courts, for example, the majority of judges in our appellate courts, remarkably, are people of color. And the same is true in our high court. So our high court is a court of 7 judges. The chief judge is African American. There's another African American from Buffalo on that court. There are 2 Latinos on that court, and then 3 Caucasian judges. One of whom is from the LGBT community. So, I mean, it is an issue. It's something that we keep pushing for. We are limited by what the political parties do, but one effect we do have is who are going to be the supervising judges and the administrative judges of those courts. And we have, basically been. My view is that every appointment we made was the best person for the job, but we never had to sacrifice merit at the altar of diversity. So I hope you know what I mean by that, because there are some folks who say,
Yep.
we have to sacrifice merit. No way in the world that we would do that. We don't sacrifice merit at the altar of a diversity. We want a diverse bench. And a diverse bench is, and if I'm going to
No, I was
long-
going to say, and I'll say what you may not be politically able to say, is that diversity. We have excellence and brilliance across the spectrum of people. And what's nice about New York, and what's nice about New York State, New York City, this college, is that the brilliance represents the demographics of our community, and the courts are now, in their brilliance, representing the diversity of our community. So thank you for making sure that people understand that people are in these jobs because they deserve to be in
Yes,
the jobs.
that's absolutely right. And my view has always been, I've expressed this publicly, and then it's been circulated in social media, that a diverse bench, there's a lot of good reasons to have a diverse bench. One of which people have talked about, it's a good role model for people who want to become judges, and others. But my position has always been that diversity is important because it injects into the decision-making process and into the quality of judicial making different perspectives, which lead always to better outcomes. So if you don't have a diverse bench, you're not going to benefit from the variety of perspectives that those judges could be offering to their colleagues on the bench.
So while Elizaveta is getting closer to the mic, Ryan, I'm going to ask one more question so that she'll have the mic when it's her turn. So we've talked about some of the roles that you oversee in this court system across the state. There are positions other than judges and people who have to be lawyers. So what other opportunities are there for people who want a career in this space?
Great. So that was part of a question I wanted to answer as well. So what we've been doing is a all-out recruitment. You heard me mention earlier the Great Resignation. So we've been losing a lot of employees, and so I just recently authorized, because we're doing a new class of court officers, additional spending, I think $100,000 to advertise on buses and trains in New York City, positions for court officers. We also are on social media now, advertising for court officer positions, stenography positions, interpreter positions, and we are changing the way in which we recruit those folks now. And our last 2 Academy of Court Officers, last 2 were the biggest we've ever had in the history of the court system. But the most recent one was also, for the first time in the history of our court system, the most diverse court academy class in the history of our courts. And so the efforts that we've made, and some of our videos are pretty slick. You know, you're talking to court officers. It's meant to cater to a younger crowd, where interviewing court officers who are talking about, how great it is to be in the courtroom. What I always tell people is, whether you're a court officer or a law clerk or whatever you're doing in the courtroom, and you've heard this phrase if you've ever seen Hamilton, the play, where I can't do the rap, but the idea is, we're in the room where it happens. How I said that wrong, but
We got it.
you got to be in the room where it happens, and that's what anybody who works in a court system is going to be able to see. Like, some major things happen. Think about it. Just this year, there's right now the Mangione trial, the person who was alleged to shoot the.
I love how you do that. He's
United-
such a
United-
lawyer.
Huh?
I love that. The alleged. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
But the Trump trial, I handled the Cardi B case. There are police shootings. There are these tragic things happening in our courts all across the state. And from my perspective, whether you're a court reporter, a court officer, the clerk in the courtroom, you're in the room seeing justice get displayed before your very eyes, get dispensed before your very eyes, right? When I was a lower court judge and I did arraignments, I'd be home and I'm looking at the news, and if I see something on the news, I see somebody get arrested. So they're telling that the news is so and so got arrested for going into this bodega, and I can tell you that very next day when I show up in arraignments, that case is going to be a case that I'm going to handle. I was once watching a Mets game, and you're probably too young to remember this, but some of you are.
Okay. Did you notice how he looked over here when he said that? All right, over to get you, Judge.
But I'm watching a Mets game against the Atlanta Braves, and the shortstop was notorious for just making great plays. And one of the Mets fans, pointed a laser in the eyes of that shortstop. On TV, the call was made. They went upstairs and arrested that dude, took him out, and the very next morning, I'm in arraignments, and this guy with the laser is appearing before me. I think that's pretty cool. I don't know what you guys, but I recuse myself. And the other thing is, just think about all of the series, when I go to Netflix, Prime, Hulu, all of these, it's all about what I do for a living.
Right.
What the courts do every single day is what movies and books. Look at your novels that are out there. It's all about what's happening in my life, not personally, but in the business of the courts. So it's an exciting place to be as far as I'm concerned.
Well, you know what? You've got me so excited. I'm like, can I leave this job and go follow you around? I was gonna say I love Law and Order, Dateline, all those shows. So I want to see the ones you write later. Elizaveta, I know you've got the mic. There you go. I couldn't see. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizaveta. I'm a scholar of Macaulay Honors and a current judicial intern to Judge Taylor. And my question
You're an
is...
intern to who?
Judge Taylor, Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, wonderful. In the Bronx. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at him. He knows his judges across the
I know
state.
my
I'm
judges,
impressed.
boy. I know my judges.
Yeah, my question is connected to, I would say, the education system in New York, because as a New York native, you attended...
Just keep your voice up. I'm getting
as a
little
New
older.
York native, you attended public schools in New York and then later attended universities in New York. How did that experience affect your perspective in the position you hold now?
Great, good. So, all right. So just full disclosure, I did go to Fordham, but I was a complete goof off in high school. So I went to Norman Thomas High School. Anybody went to Norman Thomas? No. I think they closed that place now.
Got one over there.
Oh, good. Oh, there you go. So in Norman Thomas High School, they had 4 lunch periods because it was such a big school. I only had one lunch period. But where do you think I was? So what the principal decided to do was create a, I can't believe he did this, but he created a disco in the lunchroom so that the students can dance the hustle with throw lights.
Wait a minute. How many of y'all know what the hustle is?
Yeah, hustle.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was.
It was a great dance.
And so I failed 3 classes every semester so I could hang out in the lunchroom. It turns out that I met my bride of 40 years now during one of those, periods that I shouldn't have been in there. So I also went to Bronx Community College because I couldn't get into college. Bronx, SUNY New Paltz, and then SUNY Binghamton, and then Fordham, and then Columbia Law School. But to answer your question more directly, and I said I said all that to say that it's not only that I grew up in the city, but I grew up in the city, like I ran the streets with my brothers, right? My dad had a serious mental illness. We lived in the Frederick Douglass projects, and there, but for the grace of God, go I. I never got arrested or anything. I never got arrested for anything. I've gotten stopped before, which I'm happy to share with you. But it was living in the city helped me to be street smart. Like you could be brilliant as a judge. You could know all the laws in the world. But if you don't know what's going on in the city and what's happening with the police and the fear that the police might have in walking down a dark alley, right? Being able to relate to that because anybody who's walked in, who raised in the city is familiar with that environment. Anybody who grew up in the city knows what the real deal is. Just think about like somebody who never lived in the city and never even been to a housing project. They're sitting there hearing testimony now about something that happened in a housing project. They have something in their head as to what a housing project is like, right? But from my perspective, it's better to have lived in a housing project for 15 years and know exactly what it's like and to still have cousins and nieces and nephews who still live in the project. Just use that as an example. So you grow up in the city, you've developed a street smart perspective of delivering justice. So when a cop testifies, when someone else testifies, and you've grown up in this city, I mean, is this being taped? It's okay. It's okay. I'm not going to say a few other things that might feel other states might make other states feel inadequate. But growing up in the city of New York to me is, it is so eye-opening and so different than any other place in the world. But you also experience all sorts of different things. Like I've been in a Chinese restaurant where 2 people came in with bandanas on their face and guns drawn and robbed the place. The trauma, seeing the trauma of that. I've been in situations in the city where, and I know some of you want to be police. I'm not trying to say this to discourage you in any way, because there are some excellent polices, and then there are some police that have. Let me not even characterize it, but there was one time I'm going to use this as an illustration to finish answering your question. I'm outside on 53rd and Lex. I'm waiting for my cousin to get out of the deli that he used to work for, only because he was getting paid that day, and I figured I could hang out with him. And I want to smoke a cigarette. I was a little punk, and so I'm bothering the people that are leaving the subway. And all I'm saying is, hey, you have a light? Hey, you have a light? Hey, you have a light? This massive 6'7" police officer approaches me. His hands, you see how small my hands are? His hands seem to me to be triple the size of my hands, right? But this is just me and my fear imagining it. And he says, and this is sort of when I thought, damn, maybe I want to be a lawyer, because of what I said to him. He says, keep moving. What are you doing here? Stop bothering the people. And I said, officer, you don't have the right to tell me that. I have the right to stay wherever I want. I'm not bothering anybody. And he took, it was his right hand. He took his hand and smacked, bah! Right across the face. Literally picked me up by my shirt against the wall and started dragging me down the staircase of the subway. And what I remember about that, aside from the smack and aside from how easily he lifted me off the ground, was the horror of the passerbyers who saw this officer doing that but did not feel empowered to do anything about it. He brought me down the stairs into a subway station, a bathroom. I don't know what the hell he was going to do to me down there, but I think he also saw the horror on my face and how afraid I was. And he brought me in the bathroom. He takes his billy club. He doesn't hit me with it. He throws it against the wall and the bathroom things, and it's a big thing. Just I remember this like it was yesterday. The sounds of all the bings, like bing, 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 bing. That's the billy club flying around, and I'm thinking, God, I hope it doesn't hurt me. But at that point, I was a punk, but I was never, I was not like, I was an accessory to many things, but not a principal. I was always like sort of on the side. So I was a punk, but once he saw my face and I said, look, I'm just a high school student. This is my ID. I'm sorry, officer. I didn't really mean anything by it. I don't want you to feel disrespected. I think he saw like, oh, this kid is scared and he's not really one of the punks that maybe I'm used to, et cetera. And he basically let me go. So that type of thing, you have an experience like that. Some people might say, oh, Zayas must be against police officers, But I had other things on the, other experiences with cops on the other side of things, which I saw them act perfectly appropriate, So I don't know if I answered. I know I didn't answer it directly, but I think by telling these stories, you get the point of why experience in a city environment helps you to become a better judge.
And it's more than just the experience. And thank you for your candor and your trust with us and telling your story, because I think it's important for our audience to hear the complexity of experiences that I think make you such a good judge. And not just a good judge, but now you have the ability in this role to influence what's justice across the state. And you're telling these stories and helping people think about their perspectives. And the good news about our students who are studying here to be law enforcement officers, they're going to hear these stories and they're going to think about how that reflects on the profession, because we know that the students coming out of John Jay think about things through a different lens. And they're going to be the yeast, the salt, whatever it is, that's going to go out there and continue to influence the profession for the better, just as you are influencing the operation of the court system across the state. And again, remember, the court system is not just the judges, it's everybody who plays a role. He's really orchestrating all of this. So thank you for your service, and thank you for saying yes. So Gotham has a question. No, Gotham. Where is he? Does he have the mic, Ryan? Stand on up and ask your question.
Good afternoon. My name is Gautam Manoj of the UMI MBK program. And my question for you today is, what is a normal day like for you?
My normal day?
Do you have such a thing?
So, really, my normal day is being on the phone, being in emails, having conversations, and problem solving. But a better way to think about my schedule is if I open up, I'm gonna do it from the top of my head, opened up my calendar, right? Sometimes I'm in Albany, sometimes on, basically lobbying our legislature. This is budget season, so I appeared before the legislature in February. The weeks before that, I'm preparing for my budget meeting with folks. And when you testify before the legislature, you're meeting with all of the heads, the majority leader, the speaker, governor's people, et cetera, to see if anybody has problems with, and then you testify. So there are sort of seasons, and the season of the winter is typically getting ready for the budget and making sure the budget passes. So and what we did was, it used to be that the court system would only request a 2% budget increase a year, which is crazy. That's crazy. Like, what are you guys doing? When the chief judge and I came in, and we had heard from legislators who were always saying, like, why are you always going in with this almost flat budget? But and so they wanted to do things for the courts, but the executive branch always put pressure on the judicial branch to not seek too much of an increase. So our first year, we requested an increase of 6.7%, which is the highest increase they had ever requested, and we got it passed. The second year, this year, when I was in Albany, we requested 10%. They gave us 6% so easy. We went in and requested 10%. And that's all designed to get us more judges, get us more court officers, get us more interpreters, all the resources we need. So that's part of my, the idea. We recognize that judicial morale was a problem. So we are all across the state going to events, that judicial association events, to build the morale of the judiciary, meeting with them regularly, taking their calls, having meetings, etc., building our relationship with the legislature, because that was one of our biggest problems, where the legislature did not feel any relationship with us. And so that was one of my first roles, and that's why we met in Albany recently. I saw the president there. I'm in Albany a lot. I'm having lunches and dinners and conversations all the time with the legislators to build that reputation. It's self-interested, but it's always good, because it's not only about the money, but sometimes they want to propose a bill that's going to have an operational impact on the courts that we think would be detrimental to the courts. So we need to have a way and a group of people to be able to talk to get them to change that. And then there's this big effort afoot for us to bring the legislatures into our courts, and to bring to have judges interact more with legislators. In addition to which, we're, as you see, we are out meeting with basically this idea of building the public's confidence in the courts again, because it took a big hit. And part of that strategy is for us to willingly and gladly go to forums like this. I think I told some of the students earlier that me and the chief judge together were at Columbia Law School about 4 weeks ago. Last week I was here again. The week before that I was at New York Law School, and we have plans to take our show on the road. We meet with bar associations. If there's a bar associations is a group of lawyers in particular counties that they hold events. And so our team is at every single one of them. Oftentimes they'll ask us to speak. So we're building all of these relationships with all of these constituencies in the courthouse, in the judiciary system, so that we can increase civic education and confidence in the courts.
And it is so important today for people, and we'll come into them in a minute, so important for people today to have confidence in the rule of law and confidence in our judicial system. You alluded to it earlier, but you stopped it when you got to Columbia. Tell us how you got from Columbia to the seat you're in today.
Oh, sure. So I grew up in the projects, and there's and somehow struggled with self doubt. I don't know. I'm sure many of you have heard of the imposter syndrome, and a lack of self esteem. And so, even though, and it's odd, right? Because here I am in an Ivy League law school, but because of the things I did in my day, right? I always felt like wherever I was, people weren't seeing me as Joe who got into Columbia, but Joe, that kid who ran the streets, and with his brothers and did his stuff. And there's so much to share there that we don't have enough time for that. And so when I went to Columbia, I did not have the confidence to go straight into a trial court. I knew I wanted to do public sector work. My mom just said to me, as long as you help the poor, I'm going to be happy. So I took a job with legal aid. But I didn't want to go into the trial courts because of my lack of self-doubt. I just didn't think that, if I go into a trial court and I object, Your Honor, and the judge says, "What's your objection, Mr. Zayas?" And I stand up, I'm like, I don't know, I just don't like the question. So I just didn't feel fast on my feet, right, to be a trial lawyer. But I knew that I was a good writer, and if I had time to think through things, I could come up with a great brief, right? And the amazing thing, and I know many of you are in a period of self-discovery in terms of maybe what you want to do, what type of law, if you want to go to law school, et cetera, that I began to feel as I did appeals. I mean, one of the amazing things of doing public sector work is, most lawyers never. Do you realize this? Most lawyers never get to set foot in a courtroom. Like, never get to set foot in a courtroom. So, but if you do public sector work, you're in a courtroom every day, or almost every day. So I started in appeals, loved it, was very successful. I won some big appeals. As a brand new lawyer, I argued a case in the Court of Appeals, that top court of New York, which I couldn't even believe. And I'm not saying I was even good. I was nervous as hell. I remember my first argument in the intermediate court, the appellate division, and we didn't have, um, laptops those days, so I had a handwritten argument, and I was sweating so much that my sweat dripped off my face and landed onto my paper, and smudged all of the ink, so I couldn't even finish. I did my best, but I one of the things I learned early was whatever I fear, I have to do and overcome. And so even though I feared public speaking, I said, well, the only way to overcome that, and I'm a lawyer, you got to be a public speaker. And so I did that. But then I decided, after reading all of these briefs and these transcripts, wow, if these lawyers, and I'm looking at the lawyers who are doing these cases, I'm like, I think I could do a trial. I think I can actually become a trial lawyer because I learned more. So then I went to the trial division. Then I went to, some of you, you're going to be too young for this, but somebody named Governor Pataki ran on a platform of bringing back the death penalty. Mm-hmm. And so the Legal Aid Society created an elite unit of lawyers who would handle death penalty cases. So that was my next move. And I handled the case of Darrell Harris. Google it. It was going to be New York State's first death penalty case in New York. He actually did go to trial. A jury convicted him and then sentenced him to death. A motion that I had made when I was his lead counsel, challenged the constitutionality of the death penalty in New York State. And when the case went up on appeal, even though a jury sentenced him to death, the case was ultimately reversed on a motion that I made. And I'm not trying to brag, I'm just trying to highlight for you the incredible opportunity that you have as a public sector lawyer. So they struck down the death penalty, at least in part, on a motion that I did in the trial court of this person, Darrell Harris, who had shot in Brooklyn, shot 3 people in the back of the head, gruesome crime, but we argued he shouldn't be executed for it. And then I took a job with Judge Rolando Acosta, who is an incredible judge, as his law clerk. And then 5 years later became a judge appointed by Bloomberg, and then just moved up the ladder from there, became an appellate. Then I was an administrative judge in Queens, then an appellate judge, and then I took this job.
So I'm glad you mentioned Judge Acosta. Tell us the role he played in advising you, because people talk about the role of mentors. What was his role in your
Yeah.
life and you being where you are now?
Great. So he, I didn't know him when I applied, and he basically, the moment I went to Columbia Law, he went to Columbia Law. I think that's what got me the job. And he immediately said, "I'm making you a judge." And I wasn't even eligible at the time. He said, "You want to be a judge?" I said, "I'd love to be, but I don't know how to do it." He said, "Well, I'm going to help you to become a judge." And basically, he took me to every bar association event that he attended for 5 years, and mentored me in a way where his wife and family invited us over to their home for dinner, and our kids got along, etc. He was a judge, but he would insist that I go to lunch with him, even though I would be the only law clerk. So there'd be 7 judges, 10 judges, 15 judges going to lunch that day. And he made sure that I felt a little weird about it because they're all judges and I'm a law clerk, but he insisted that I do that. And he, he just became one of my best friends. Now is my best friend. We traveled together and now, so he retired, this Judge Acosta. And once you retire and you want to go into practice, you need to get a identification that allows you to enter the courts, even though you're a retired judge. So when he applied for that and he sent me a picture of his ID, whose name was on that? It was my name. So it was very cool. And he said, "What's wrong with this picture?" And I said, "Let me tell you something, my man. You better behave yourself because I could withdraw that ID at any moment that I want." But it was, I describe him as a mentor who was hands-on, kind, and would do anything to advance my career.
And what I love is that you are paying it back in such an exponential way by being everywhere you are and mentoring these younger lawyers, and not just one-on-one, because you do that as well, but with all of us here. So thank you for that. So Ryan, we've got a question up here. Give him the mic. Thank you.
Judge, New York City is required to close Rikers Island Correctional Facility by 2027, but it looks quite unlikely that the borough jails will be ready in time. What do you think will play out in terms of this issue?
The last part of that?
What do you think the solution to the problem will be?
Sure. So I wrote a piece in Vital City, which is Liz Glazer's magazine, and I sort of laid out what I thought were the problems with the. I used to be on the Rikers Island Implementation Committee in 2018 when we came up with this idea.
And I just say full disclosure, I'm on the 2.0, so I just wanted
you
you to
are
know that.
good.
Okay.
Yeah. And thank you for you guys said very nice things about what we're doing
Yeah,
in the court.
and I
stuff.
hope you talk about that because you are.
So one of the things, I have chambers in Queens, right? And I used to go to the Queens House of Detention to interview my clients, and so after this goal was put in place, I saw literally, because every time I had to get on an elevator from my chambers, I saw them take apart brick by brick, literally cinder block by cinder block, because the jail was connected to the courthouse and connected to the DA's office, and I saw them just take it apart to the point where one day it was just a flat surface, and the effort now to build new places and to do what they have to do, the same thing. This has to be done deliberately, carefully. What we've done in New York City is we recently instituted a case processing initiative. Uh, we have always been very effective at dealing with the very old cases, right? There's a whole bucket of middle cases where defendants are on Rikers Island, but they haven't been there that long, is this new discovery law that has caused all sorts of delays. And so we are now advancing those cases and putting all sorts of efforts into reducing the discovery delays. Because the discovery delays, you can't really move forward with the case. You can't even answer ready for trial, or at least have a court resolved whether or not that readiness for trial was properly issued until you resolve that. So way earlier in the case, we're trying to do that so that those old cases, all of those old cases, it's the lion's share of the cases that are pending, will never get into that old case category. And we have a whole program related to the old case category where we're monitoring it. Every administrative judge in every county is holding everybody accountable. It's a very complex problem because you might have a lawyer representing, let's say, 10 defendants, really old cases, and there's bail set so their clients are in Rikers Island. You have judges fighting over that lawyer, saying, "Mr. Jackson, you better be in my courtroom tomorrow to try this case." And Mr. Jackson says, "Judge, I would love to try that case, but the judge in Brooklyn has ordered me there and is bringing witnesses in from Portland on that particular day." So we're trying to get that sort of all coordinated. The other problem judges have is, prosecutor comes in, says they're ready. The defense then comes in and says, "Judge, I need an adjournment." The judge says, "No way you're getting adjournment, counsel. You knew this case was on today." And then the lawyer says, "Well, I just found out from the prosecutor this morning that there's this witness who's in California who I have an obligation, constitutional obligation, to go investigate. And this is the judge, this is that witness's statement." So it's very complicated. And you try to strike a balance between pushing a case forward and not violating the defendant's rights to have effective assistance of counsel, or not adversely affecting the defendant's rights, because some judges now are more inclined to relieve the attorney who keeps asking for an adjournment. But the defendant has an absolute constitutional right to an attorney of his choosing. So these are entrenched issues that we've been trying to resolve for many, many, many years.
But I will say that we give the Court of Appeals a lot of credit for it. One of the only way that this is going to work is to reduce the population at Rikers, and the work that they're doing to expedite the cases through the process and reduce the number of people who are still at Rikers, we so appreciate while they're still trying to build those jails.
Right. Let me just say one other thing, because before COVID, we got the population down to below 4,000.
Right.
So, I mean, it's this type of thing that I want everybody to know. I have confidence we can do that again. But COVID caused the backlog, and then the increase in violent felony offenses during COVID, after COVID. So I think those are things that when they came up with the 4,000 capacity rule, maybe not the best thing to do, because you never know the future. And you don't want that to dictate, because you don't know what the direction of the increases in crime might be, right? So,
But I gotta plead my side about why we still stuck with that number is because you could the mental health piece because there are a lot of people in the system who don't need to be in jail, and there's a
Yes.
substantial way to reduce the population by addressing having people and also not incarcerating everybody and at Rikers while they're waiting for their trial because
right.
it's supposed to be are you at risk for fleeing and not showing
Yes, yes.
not showing up. But anyway, we're talking law here. There's a question from the.
Judge Zayas, it's great to see you.
Can you stand
and
up so the other people can hear the question?
It's great to see you, and thank you so much for all your service. You mentioned that the court is going to be recruiting additional court officers, stenographers, and so forth. You also talked a little bit about how you develop great writing skills, right? Because you said you were comfortable in your writing skills.
Because we were at Columbia together.
That's right.
That's
Oh, you guys know each other.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I have some of my students here. There are other students around. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what kinds of skills do you see, some of the basic skills that you think students should be working on, right, that they can use to carry on to any of these positions, and that those of us who are here as professors can help students develop?
Oh, great, good. No, I think that's a great question. I mean, this is going to sound like maybe too simple, but because of my goofing off in high school, right? The benefit of that was I was neurotic, obsessive about studying hard because I never wanted to get back in the situation where I had to go to summer school and night school. The first thing is just hard work, hard work, hard work, right? And then with respect to, in high school, I failed to, a lot of the classes I failed was English. And the way I figured out how to, one of my teachers basically said, what you need to do is read the New York Times. She gave me her copy, my English teacher, of the New York Times every day. And it helped me to learn how to, I think the New York Times helped me to learn how to not only read but well and catch up on what's happening in the world, but to write, because all I did was I read what people were writing. And so writing assignments, I think, are critical. I mean, Ruth Gator Ginsburg said that writing is the lost art of being a lawyer. And then English, because the spoken word, and most lawyers have to write a lot. So I think focusing on a curriculum that includes heavy duty writing, public speaking, and things along those lines. Yeah.
Thank you. So Ryan, I see one over here and then one in the back there.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I just have one question. How do federal court decisions impact the state level?
Oh, that's a good question. Federal decisions try to stay away from the what's happening in the city, unless what's happening in the city is affecting the constitutional rights of the citizens in the city. So I'll give you the stop and frisk litigation that I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. Stop and frisk is a local issue, right? It's the police department's way of trying to get guns off the street, et cetera. I guess that's a generous view of saying that, a benevolent view of saying that. And the federal courts got involved because a claim was made that the stops were based on race and where people lived, et cetera. So that's one example. But there's a lot of examples of if someone's raising a constitutional claim with respect to how the police are treating people in the city, that becomes a federal court case. And there's many other examples of it, but that's the best one that comes to mind now.
Thank you. Just in the red hat over there, there's a question. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Judge. My name is Hans Delva. I'm a senior at John Jay. I would say I have a lot of questions, but and I would love to get in more in detail with you. But I think the question that I can ask, and I think everyone should hear about, when do you think a case becomes like precedent? Like, is there a case now that's on the docket where you think in future references you're going to start referencing this case as a new precedent for lawmaking and law policy making and stuff like that?
Wow, that's a good question.
Impressive. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So a case, if I issue a ruling, right, as a lower court judge, that no one in my level of that judge, judges of my level, same jurisdiction, will see my decision as precedent, that binding precedent that they have to follow. There are, but it might have persuasive authority. So if I make a ruling on a particular issue, my colleagues might say, well, Zayas already did this, and I like his reasoning, so I'm going to adopt his reasoning. A case does not become precedent until an appellate court has decided, this particular judge, this is the law in this area. That's when a case becomes precedent. And there's four, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but there's four judicial departments, first, second, and third, and fourth department. And so if something happens in the Bronx or Manhattan, and an appellate court decides that issue, and none of the other three departments have said anything about it, that becomes the precedent for the whole state. But if, like, for example, the first department and the second department have said conflicting things about what the law is in that area, that's the type of case that winds up going to the Court of Appeals. So the Court of Appeals can decide, what the law is and what the true precedence it is, because two courts are disagreeing as to what the rules should be.
So we could go on, but I know that 2:55 is supposed to be our magic finish date. Yeah, Mindy's my boss. Judge and I concluded that on the way up here. I think we need to have you back because there's a not. And I just want to say thank you for inviting us to come up and hear the Court of Appeals in session. I will drive the bus. No, you won't. You don't want me driving the bus. I will be on the bus with the kids coming up because that is a wonderful invitation and wonderful opportunity. And we will coordinate with your team to make sure we figure out how to do that. So thank you.
Would love that.
Thank you.
We want students coming in. We want to go into, there's even been discussions of the court holding session. We held a session in CUNY Law School once.
Oh, when I was saying, do you all ever sit outside of Albany? That would be wonderful if you sit someplace where it's easier for us to come.
They just sat in Binghamton. The Court of Appeals just sat in Binghamton. They saw it in Buffalo.
Well, I think you need to come down here to CUNY. We can make it easy. Thank you. Well, I'm going to give, right?
Is there like a fake a moot court?
Yeah, this is our moot court, and we can bring the stuff in. We'll figure it out.
You need 7 judges.
Yeah, we can figure that out.
All right.
Thank you. So I don't know if you've got any parting words for us, but I just want to say thank you. You are a gift, not just to John Jay, but to the state for taking this job, because it's a huge responsibility. But knowing that somebody with your integrity, your experience, your brilliance, and your background is in this role really means a lot to us. So thank you. But you're going to have the last word.
So I haven't thought about what I would say. I didn't realize I would do it this, but let me say this. We are committed to building the public's confidence in the judiciary. And we are committed to diversity, and this looks like a very diverse group. So this is precisely the types of things that fall into the category of things we want to do. We want to get our judges back out into the colleges and into the classrooms. We want to get folks back into the courthouses, civic education, all of that. And so we're on a mission to do this. I mean, like I said, this in the last 6 weeks, me and the chief and others have visited a bunch of the law schools and colleges, and that's what we want to keep doing. I'm happy to come back and tell you my whole journey about. I mean, I got all sorts of machete stories in my day, and all sorts of stuff that one of the things I didn't say today, but I tell all the judges across the state is that one of the ways we're going to build confidence with the public is if we demystify the bench. And you demystify the bench with situations like this, where judges are talking about their lives, because judges are like everybody else. You just don't know anything about them because they maybe they're afraid to talk, maybe they think it's inappropriate. But the curtain has to come down between the public and judges. Judges sit on an elevated. The president said, "Oh, I can't see you back there." When the judge gets on an elevated portion of the bench, it's partly to see people, make sure you see folks what's going on, but it was specifically designed, as was the robe, to create a sense of superiority and respect between the judge. But it had, and I get that, right? Because when you have people come in court, you want to make sure they're going to obey decorum, etc. But one of the adverse effects of that is that it makes people feel scared going into a courthouse, like something's going to happen. And so I've always made it a practice anytime I sat, and even if a new employee came in, a new interpreter came into my courtroom, but litigants came in, the first, and especially if they didn't know me and this was their first time and I knew it, I would give them the biggest smile. And I'll say, "Good morning, Mr. Jackson. Good to see you. Thanks for coming today." And smile at them just to make them relax, because that's what our courts need to start doing, and talking about themselves and letting them know who we really are. We're just like ordinary citizens who happen to be judges and show empathy. There's one judge in Queens who has and she doesn't mind me sharing this, who has, and I know we're short on time. I'm gonna close up with this, President, where she has a son who died of an overdose, and then she had a daughter who was driving under the influence and killed somebody walking along the road in East Hampton who was a laborer, a landscaper. And she's a youth court judge, and she's going around and telling this story because we want people to know that judges are just like us. We recognize the importance of empathy, street smarts, and all of the other things we've been talking about. So,
Thank you for sharing. So, thank you very much for joining us, and we will have you back.
absolutely, anytime.